Hi, I'm August Keller, and this is my review of Iron Man. So, while this movie kickstarted a juggernaut franchise, I can't help but find it fairly ordinary on its own. I know my opinion here might bother some people, but I hope that at the very least some people find it interesting. So, let's start with the story. The story is formulaic, like by definition, it started the MCU formula. It's especially formulaic now, but even back in 2008, it was a regular origin story. It just did it well. It did it correctly without any massive mistakes. But let's move into the drama. I think a lot of people give this movie a lot of credit for having an arc, and it goes through the arc motions. It hits all these marks that simulate an arc, but I find the arc to be contra- contradictory. So, specifically, Stark denounces weapons manufacturing after almost dying from a missile, right? That he starts out as this corporate, greedy guy and learns the error of his ways. That's the whole arc. But at the same time, he also builds an Iron Man suit, which is a highly sophisticated weapon. And the film tries to reconcile this by painting him as this honorable peacekeeper. But in reality, he's a vigilante and, partakes in some violent things. So, maybe it would have made more thematic sense for Stark to start investing in or advocate for medical technology. But of course, that's not what this movie is. People probably hear me say that and think I'm ridiculous for even suggesting it, but I'm just saying if this movie was following the arc that it set up, that's maybe something that it would actually end on if it was like a drama or something. So he learns that violence and war is wrong, but ends up becoming a the most sophisticated weapon of war. So you see how that kind of doesn't really work. So it hits all these marks, so there's this illusion of growth, but I find the actual lessons learned questionable. And so let's move on to the themes. I think this movie would like people to think that there are no themes. But I can't help see this movie as a bit of like glorification of the privatization of military, um, and it doesn't address the implications of that. I know superhero movies are always having to kind of toe this line of addressing vigilantism or not. And I know people want to just call these popcorn movies where you turn off your brain and just don't think about things like that. But I think it's especially noticeable in a movie like this where, Stark is, I mean, his whole arc is him showing, feeling guilty for for contributing to worldwide violence. But then the movie doesn't really do anything else. It's really just about that. So it kind of feels like this movie is trying to have its cake and eat it too, by him arcing by growing beyond contributing to violence, but then also having these action sequences, which is what people came to see. Um, and again, with the plot is just fundamentally an origin story, a superhero origin story. So there isn't much else going on other than this very basic thing. So it's hard for me not to think about what this movie's conveying because there's not much else going on. Um, the acting, of course, is great. Robert Downey Jr. has all the natural charisma that he's become known for. And there are some scenes of vulnerability. I do find that vulnerability to be a bit fleeting by the end. There's vulnerability in the beginning, but it doesn't really feel fully realized or sincere even by the end. So you know that's a little bit of a struggle for me, but I can't deny that he brought this character to life. That's just undeniable. So overall, Iron Man is structured well and has a lot of fun, quick, quippy dialogue, but its messages are mixed, which undercuts the drama and themes. Technically, Iron Man is passable. Its direction almost feels intentionally neutral and kind of voiceless. It's like this prototype for competent MCU genericness, where it's just, it puts everything out there in this very neutral way and doesn't really have a strong style to it. Compared to something like The Dark Knight, which came out that same year, or Sam Raimi's Spider-Mans. I mean, those movies have style to them, and this movie just does everything competently. The cinematography, there aren't really any noticeable visuals other than a couple hero shots that are nice. The editing does some timeline manipulation, jumping back and forth, but there aren't any like stylish transitions. The pacing is good, is fine. The momentum is good and fine, but I don't really find it to be elevated or particularly elevated, anyways. The sound is good. There's a lot of genre here, like action and kind of sci-fi ish with the Iron Man suit, and there are some symbolic, emotionally driven touches. So it's complex. The sound, the music has some classic rock songs, which I find to be the most memorable part. Nothing else is really impactful. Um, the production design, of course, is recognizable. The iconic Iron Man merchandising, which started a trend or ignited the trend to an even higher level. The cast is great. Of course, this is probably what the best part of the movie. There's a perfect fit with Robert Downey Jr. And it was kind of like a breakout role for him, or a revival of his career. He's elevating him to superstardom. So it might feel obvious now that he was the man to play Iron Man, but at the time it was a bit of a risk. The effects, of course, are significant. There's a lot of CGI, but there are some awkward combinations of CGI bodies with a real face keyed in. They'll take the mask off and you see Robert Downey Jr.'s face in a giant robot suit, and those always, when you blend those two things, a real skin so close to CGI, it really kind of can look awkward, especially when you're trying to make it look like one entity. But the effects are positive. So ultimately, Iron Man doesn't have any blatant flaws, especially for people who aren't necessarily so invested in the themes as I am, because it does follow the rubric of how to arc well. I don't think the flaws are blatant, and the writing is good otherwise. But I also don't feel like it has super powerful strengths other than the casting and the sound design to a certain extent, and the production design. But other than that, I feel like the movie is kind of, doesn't really evoke a strong emotional response, even from people who do forgive its flaws. So overall, I do find it to be a pretty good movie. It's hard. It's funny to say that now, looking at what it became and what became up from it. But looking at the movie just on its own, um, it's good. But I wouldn't say it's great. So that's all I have to say about that. If you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to like and subscribe. You're also welcome to follow me on my Instagram, which is linked in the description. But at the very least, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.